Welcome to the Clear to Close podcast with your host, local mortgage expert Ryan Bolton. Ryan has the questions and answers, tips and tricks, do's and don'ts, and expert guests to explain all the steps needed to buy or sell real estate. And now it's time for the Clear to Close podcast.
Hey everyone, Ryan Bolton here. I am a mortgage nerd. Today on the Clear to Close podcast, we've got a special guest, Jared Plew with Infinity Title. We've got the first quarter of 2024 in the books, so I thought it'd be good to just kind of recap what we're seeing as trends, how they line up with projections, and just kind of what we've seen after the end of 2023, and just kind of what we might see happening in the future. So we got some charts to go through, and really appreciate Jared. Again, he's with Infinity Title, so if you're in Utah and you need title work done, if you're purchasing a home, refinancing, I highly recommend Jared. Used you for, how many years now? It's been a long time, almost when I first moved here in 2005. I think I met you within the first year of moving to St. George. And
20 years.
And this isn't a promo video. You're not paying me to do any of this. There's no paid sponsorships, but I found he's one of the best closers in town. Their team is really good. The only interaction a client ever really has is at that closing table. All the other work is between you and me and the agent. You know, they never really see the title company till the very end. And all they see is you sitting there with a stack of papers like that thick.
Yeah.
And you just have a calming influence. You go through it slowly. I really appreciate how well you are at closing. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Giving you a little shout out. And that's one of the things I judge most title companies on is that interaction with the client. Because you guys all get the paperwork in a relatively quick time. The pricing, the fees are all pretty close. There's never a huge difference, but that interaction with the client is that's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And that's the only interaction they ever have with you is at that closing table. So anyway, just really appreciate Jared for his expertise and just how professional he is and really good with my clients and every client I've ever heard you use. So let's go through a couple charts here. Number one, I want to talk about mortgage interest rates. So this chart you can see is pretty level. We had rates kind of peak in October around the 20th at 8.03%. They bottomed out about February to 6.63%, and now we're about 7% is where we're seeing it. Now, certain loan programs are going to be higher or lower. This is kind of an average of the market, what people are actually getting as interest rates. So just like car financing or anything else, everybody advertises their lowest possible rate, but most people don't get that rate. You know, that requires huge money down, time on the job, credit scores to get that very, very low rate. But this kind of shows you the overall average in the market and just how it's kind of been this way for a while and probably will be for a while. The Fed's really not changing rates. It's kind of the new normal, and it has been that way most of the first quarter of the year. So we're seeing rates kind of more pressure to just stay where they're at. We're not seeing a lot of pressure for rates to get better or worse. It's like every report I see should make rates better, and the next one I see should make rates worse. There's just kind of a wait-and-see pattern, especially with what the Feds are going to do and what inflation numbers are going to do. But that kind of gives you an indication this is the new normal. And really, if you look at the 70-year average of mortgage rates, we're still below a 70-year average. Now, if you look at the last 10 years, we're well above that.
Sure.
But if you look at the history of mortgage rates, something in the sixes is very, very normal. In fact, it's low in most of those years.
Yeah. It's funny because friends and family, the question I get more than anything is, what are rates at? And to be honest with you, like most of my family and friends think I do mortgages.
Yeah.
One of the common misconceptions in the business. No, I do title.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't care about that.
I have people that say that I'm a real estate agent. I have that a lot. Oh, you do something with real estate, you sell real estate, and I always have to correct. No, I do the financing part of things. So I do some fix and flip. So I have my own properties that I rent and stuff like that. So that's why they kind of get it mixed up. But yeah, we're all kind of just lumped into real estate, it seems like. Yeah.
And they ask me what rates are, and I'm like, well, I can tell you what rates were a month ago, because when I do the closing, I'm seeing it, a month after it's been locked in, or 2 weeks to a month after it's been locked in. So, and I'm seeing it, but like you're saying, the closings that I'm doing now, it's all over the place. Like some are around like 7%, some I've seen some under 6%. But I don't know the backstory. I don't know how they got to that rate. I mean, I see, some of them are paying points to buy it down and different loan programs and things like that. And so I try to piece it together. But I don't really, on my end, doing the actual closing, I'm not seeing a lot of trending happening. It's just like kind of up and down, kind of stagnant for the most part.
And so much is based on points. I mean, points have become much more common on loans because the cost to get the rates and stuff like that have changed so much. And what you're seeing is you're really seeing these small jumps for a little more points and then a big jump to the next tier. So yeah, it's just kind of how the yield curves are working right now, are just all over the place.
Yeah, and we were seeing a lot of temporary buy downs. The 2-1 buy down where they buy their rate down for the first year or two. And we were seeing a lot of that last year. I haven't seen much of it lately.
Right.
A lot of it's just they're just paying points and just doing a permanent buy down.
Right. That's what I'm seeing. And I think a lot of it comes down to how long they think they're going to keep that loan. And a lot of people have a consensus. We may see rates better in 26, maybe after the election, 27, and maybe they don't even plan on keeping the home that long. So you're starting to see there's been a little bit more the new normal. You know, everybody was getting used to rates being so much higher, so they're buying it down to get kind of that rate they wanted. Now we're just realizing this is just kind of where rates are, and this is what we're going to just ride out until then. But I've often said the rate on a mortgage, even at 8%, is better than a rate on a rental property. But, you know, it's 100% when you're renting kind of thing. So it is just the new normal. And I think it's still better to see, okay, maybe you can afford $2,500 a month. Well, before that, bought a lot more. Maybe now it buys less, but it's still something out there that may work to at least get you into the home and just stop paying rent or start gaining appreciation and just be ready for either upgrading down the road maybe a little bit sooner or just riding out that home that much longer. But it is something where you're getting people off the fence a little bit more, realizing, okay, we're not going to see rates maybe drop down as quickly as we thought. This is the new normal. Let's see what's out there at this particular price range.
Yeah, I think lending guidelines are such that your lender's not going to allow you to get into a loan that you can't afford.
Right.
I mean, so it's worth the risk. Like if you can afford paying a mortgage on whatever that house might be, a mobile home, a condo, a single family, whatever it is, like it's worth the risk of, you know, if you can qualify, do it. Like go for it.
Right. And like I said, the $2,500 payment you can afford just affords less than it did before, but it doesn't mean it completely eliminates the ability to buy. And I'm seeing even in the news and forums and stuff like that, there's the when you mention mortgages or buying a home, everybody's like, don't do it, horrible time, wait for the crash, wait for this and that. That has gone down so dramatically because the crash didn't happen in 2022, 2023, and even 2024. There's more of an uptick in outlook than there was just doom and gloom, especially through 2023. And we're even seeing in January, we saw applications for mortgages rise by 9% year over year. And even in March, we saw the biggest increase year over year, almost 10% increase in just people even applying for mortgage loans again, just to see what's ready. The spring buying season's coming up, summer's coming up. So you always have a little bit of an influx of people moving during the holidays or during the summer months. And we even see that in St. George, even though it's a very warm climate. When kids get out of school, that's when they start maybe moving to a different district. They can retire now, empty nesters. There's always more movement during the summer months than there is in the winter. Even in a place that's more of a snowbird, kind of a winter destination, there's always an uptick in June. Right. So you're already seeing the pump kind of getting primed a little bit with people starting to see what's available today.
Right.
Right.
Yep, totally.
So let's go to the next slide here. We got some great slides to kind of back up what happened the first quarter. That's kind of what we're reviewing is just what happened the first quarter here in Washington County. So let's look at the next slide.
So we're looking at foreclosures and notice of defaults here. So you can see that there has been an increase. If you look at that highlighted area, I mean, in foreclosures, 78% more this year versus last year. And with NODs, 44% more. If you look at just that percentage, that's like, oh my gosh, 78% increase. That's huge, which that's a high percentage. But when we're talking about going from 3 per month to 5 per month, it's like, it's really not that big of a deal.
And it's funny how that headline can hit you. Foreclosures are up 80%, almost nearly 80%. You're like, holy cow, but it's up 2.
Yeah, it's up 2. So it's like, don't panic, calm down, everything's fine.
And it's been historically low for like 5 years now. Our foreclosures have been crazy low. So honestly, an uptick in that is actually good news for the market.
It's good.
Right.
Yeah, a healthy market, you want to see some foreclosures happening. That means you're in a healthy market where you're not completely inflated, you're not headed for a bubble. Like there should be, just in the natural flow of things, there should be foreclosures happening basically constantly.
Right. And there's always reason for foreclosures. It's not just bad lending practices or a crisis like we had in 08 that foreclosure became really a bad word. It's a natural part of the mortgage lending because people lose their job, people pass away. Even foreclosures on reverse mortgages get NODs actually filed, even though they're still working on selling the property or they're doing something with the property. And sometimes you'll have lenders that'll file that NOD right as you're 30 days late, but they're really not going to go through the full foreclosure process. So they've at least got to initiate those waiting periods. So that's where you'll see in the graphs too that notice the defaults are kind of up here, but the actual foreclosures are down here somewhere. Because between those two time frames, the property gets sold, refinanced, something happens where it doesn't go full into foreclosure.
Right.
Like I don't remember the last time a house went all the way to the courtyard steps and actually sold through that means, because there's usually equity, there's sellers and buyers ready to pick up that home before it gets that far.
Yeah, the biggest thing that prevents foreclosures from happening is appreciation.
Right.
Because most of the loans that are getting foreclosed on are recent loans, because your home shouldn't be, from 1 year to the next, your home shouldn't be going up that much in value. And every time you sell a property, you have transaction costs, you have real estate commissions, you have closing fees. And so when your home's only appreciating by 2%, 4%, it's not enough appreciation to cover the cost of doing that transaction. Right. And so you don't really have equity in that home. And so and then you lose your job, suddenly, unexpected, or whatever the case may be. It's like, well, I'm not going to go through selling this. I'm just going to let it go to foreclosure. So,
especially by the time you pay the commissions, the title fees, the things that are involved, and if you put very little down to begin with, you're basically 100% finance. You have to bring 10 grand to the table. Most people in that situation just say, never mind, let it go, and the bank just takes over.
Yeah. But when homes are appreciating at 15, 20, 30% a year, it's like, why would anybody ever foreclose? Right. If you can't make the payment, just sell the house.
Right.
Take the money. So,
and in most cases, too, people were more willing to work with their lender and not just walk away, not only because of the appreciation, but replacing the cost of that house. The monthly payment, even if they were struggling, would still be able to afford the $2,500 because they can't replace it with renting or buying another house. They're better off just to find a way to save that house. So, and that's what we've seen mostly in real estate. And why the 2008 bubble was such a surprise and why so many people never thought it would happen is because people will miss their car payment, their Visa payment, their other payments first before the house, because it's harder to replace the house payment with a rental or something cheaper, or going from owning a home back into the rental pool, especially if it's a payment that's more affordable than even rents. You got people that have a $1,500 mortgage payment. They can't even replace that. So they're going to do a lot more work to keep at least the house payment current. Right. So that's why you also see foreclosures just went to almost nothing. They almost went to debt zero. Yeah. So it's interesting to see that it has upticked a little bit, but that's actually an indication of a stabilizing market, not one that's scary in the sense. Now, if it goes up 5,000% or something crazy, we go from none to 500, wow, there's something really happened there. But like you said, most people don't have to, they can just sell it. They can just go right to selling the property.
And that percentage increase, it was at 78% with foreclosures. That percentage should diminish over time. So as those numbers get higher, hopefully that percentage is going down.
Right, that makes sense. Because if it goes up, jumps up to 5 and it stays at 5, then there's no percentage increase, even though the same number of homes are being foreclosed. Okay, great. Is that it on that slide, or is there any other things you want to point out on that? Okay.
No, I mean, the only other thing is just, and it's an overall kind of takeaway, is that if you compare it to the monthly average over the last 30 years or any period of time, foreclosures and NODs are way down. So
again, over a 30-year average, it's 80% of normal. Is that what that's saying there?
No, it's down 8%, so it's 20% of normal.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And NOD 65% down, so
65
35%.
over that time frame. That's incredible. That's
so
basically zero. I mean, it almost is mathematically zero. In a real sense, it's almost zero.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to slide number 3, I believe. Here we go. Okay.
So again, just comparing quarter 1, 2023 to quarter 1, 2024. These are number of transactions in Washington County, so sales and loans. And loans, just keep in mind that can be a purchase loan or a refinance loan. I didn't break it down, but I mean, refis are still pretty much non-existent, right?
I think they're down to 11% of the overall market when it was like 99%. I mean, there was a 2-year period where it was all refinances, and I'm still looking at where is 11% even coming from? Yeah. Unless it is something where you've got what I see probably the only refinance section right now is maybe divorces or something where they're getting rid of some partner. Somebody else is on the loan, they have to take them off. Because it really isn't a rate. Even that, it's debt consolidation has been hard, or possibly that could be even refinancing of second mortgages or getting other types of debt. But yeah, refinance is probably as low as they've been in my entire career. Yeah. And a lot of that's because people already have their 3 or 4% rate. It's pretty tough to go into the 6s unless you have to for divorce, or you have to because of way other debts, or just have a lot of equity or something that you want to tap into. That refinances, I've never seen them as low. Like the request for applications for refinances are as low as they've been.
Yeah. So if you compared, the last couple of years, it's 7% increase on sales, and then I think it was 4% increase on loans. But again, if you compare it, I think on that one I compared it over a 10-year period, and we're still quite a bit below.
Right. Jump back to that slide one more time. I wanted to look at one other number on there. Okay. So we've got 877 transactions. This was last year. The last quarter.
In the first quarter of last
2023.
year.
Okay. Yeah. So we do see an increase in both, but pretty much just status quo. It's been that way for quite a while. So I want to look at that kind of change. And then you can see, over the last 10 years, we're closer to 1,000. So it's definitely low from what we were, but it's not like it's plummeting. It's not like we're seeing a crash or a bubble bursting or something. It's really just back to kind of more of a normal market.
Yeah, I think if we compare it to another year in the past, as far as number of transactions go, I think we're close to like 2017. So whatever volume we were doing in 2017, we're back to that volume.
That's interesting. That's about 10 years after the 08 stuff. So now, it's like a mini correction in a way. I mean, that's really what the market's trying to do is trying to balance these things instead of having to be just a crash and a roller coaster kind of thing. And I think that's what most of the policies were designed to do. Maybe there's always conversation whether they acted too late or too early, but it seems like they have done what they did to be able to just make sure it's a softer landing. Yeah. And it really just shows how the supply and demand is still a bigger issue than bad lending practices of 08 or overinflated properties or just bad loans out there. They're just propping up a bad market. Yeah. All that's been flushed out. Ability to repay, some of the regulations, like you even said, they don't let you get in a home you can't afford. Yeah. There isn't loan programs you can just say, I make $10,000 a month. Yep. There just isn't those programs anymore, especially the high loan to values. If there is programs that allow for stated income or limited doc, but they're back to what they were before. There are make sense deals with money down, credit scores, other things to offset that. Where the problem was that they kind of combined the worst part of the mortgage industry and also added to 100% financing. Yeah. So I think that's where you're seeing that the market has been much more stable since 08. Yeah. Absolutely.
The beautiful thing about that is, we talk about the volume of transactions being comparable to 2017, which was 7 years ago. The beautiful thing of that is that the values for those of us that own property, it's beautiful in Washington County. It's that the values are not back to the 2017 level. So our values are quite a bit higher now than they were back then. So we're experiencing this correction without the consequence of home values going way down.
Good point.
Just supply and demand again.
Right.
Supply and demand.
And speaking of supply and demand, let's talk about how do we fit the supply and demand. And that's where we're going to talk about building permits. So let's go to the next slide. This is going to talk about the building permits in Washington County. And this is really crucial because this is the inventory that's being added, because we're not seeing a lot of existing homes hitting the market because of the reasons we talked about. They have a lower rate, lower payment. They can't really replace their home and upgrade without kind of a double whammy. But you're starting to see building permits change a little bit, and you're seeing builders get a little more confident that the rates have kind of leveled off, or that's kind of the price point. I have seen the price point go down a little bit with new builds, which is nice because the labor costs and some of those things and supply costs have come down a little bit. Land costs have come down a little bit, but you're definitely starting to see a little more confidence on the builder side. So let's review this one here.
Absolutely. So this is the 5 cities basically that make up the St. George, greater St. George area, I guess you could say. So, in each of those cities, with the exception of Ivins, there was an increase in building permits from quarter 1 of last year to quarter 1 this year. The biggest increase there you can see is Hurricane, but skipping down to the bottom, comparing it over the last 10 years, all of the cities have gone down considerably if we're looking at averages, with the exception of Washington.
Yeah, 24% increase over 10 years.
So that's an indication that Washington is the lion's share of the growth that's happening in Washington County. Washington, above the other cities, is kind of growing at a better rate or a greater rate than the other cities.
It's interesting to see Ivins kind of be that slower area. And it's probably a Black Desert Resort. They're taking all the construction, all the wood that they can deliver to Ivins is all going to Black Desert. They're building this massive resort out there on the golf course. I haven't seen that size and scale of a project in Washington County since maybe even the convention center.
That's the biggest in Utah, isn't it?
It's got to be. I mean, they've got maybe something up in Provo or Salt Lake or something like that. It's big, but for Washington County, I don't think there's a bigger, especially if you count just the acreage, because you got a golf course thrown in there, but the resort and just that whole thing out there, the condos, the resorts, the townhomes, everything they're building for that is just amazing. And I think that's in October this year, the PGA Tour and the LPGA, same venue. For the first time, I think, in Utah's history, and this is the first time the PGA has been back in like 60 years or something like that. I think they had other events. They have a senior event, I think, at Thanksgiving Point, but I don't know if it's part of their normal tour. It's more of it's more of a different type of off tour, off week kind of thing. So it's big news. Ironmans, all the things that kind of put in St. George on the map. I tell you, I've been out to Black Desert. It's an amazing golf course. And once they get the cameras out there, the drones, and just some of the stuff they've been able to do with the red rock in the background, all that Black Desert.
It's unreal.
It's unreal. It really is quite unreal. Yeah. There's hum and hawing about the golf course. There's some saying the pros are just going to tear it up. A lot of blind shots kind of off the tee, but after that it opens up. But Weisskopf is one of the last courses he did. I think it was actually his last course before he passed away. And so there's really going to be a really cool event in October. Yeah. So they're just pumping that project to get it done by then. So I think that's probably why Ivan's permits are down, is they can't even issue anymore because they ran out of wood.
Yeah, Black Desert is an amazing thing that's happening out there. And for someone that is from St. George, I grew up here, been here basically my entire life. Admittedly, I'm very small-minded. And so when we experience appreciation like we do, and we experience projects like Black Desert, even the project where my office is, which is a multi-family mixed-use project, and they built it, and it was big, and I was like, that's too big for St. George. Like, that's just too big. Yeah. We can't handle that. Right. And they were rented out in a couple of months, and it's like and with appreciation, I'm thinking to myself, like, the prices have got to come down. It's too expensive. We can't afford it. It's going to come down. But things like Black Desert happen, and then the big name that's floating around now is Kevin Costner is doing a studio here. Mm-hmm. And there's just these things that are happening in Washington County and in our area that you're like, that's just the new reality of where we live. Like, it's going to keep growing, and prices, they're going to ebb and flow a little bit. There'll be dips, but they're not going to crash. We're not going to see values back to what they were in 2011, 2012. It's just not going to happen.
And I think St. George has gotten so discovered. You got the Phoenix, Palm Springs, you got some of these areas that people have found that have the temperate climate that, get rid of the humidity. They're just really a desirable place. And that's a testament to the pioneers and the people that came before us, how they set up just a wonderful area. And there's still people that don't know about southern Utah. They hear Utah, they may know of Salt Lake, they may know of skiing, winter, snow, that type of stuff. But the more and more, Zion National Park has just gone ballistic. I see reports it's like fourth and fifth most visited park in the country. You're talking right there with Yellowstone, Yosemite. You're talking about some of the biggest parks in the country, and Zion right there. Yeah. You got Lake Powell right there. You got the north rim of the Grand Canyon is all kind of right here in this corridor. And the more and more you get Ironmans, World Senior Games, and now you're getting PGA Tour. Nowhere else in the state got a PGA Tour event. Of the whole entire state they could pick, they got crazy. Southern Utah. And I think it's going to be a testament to what this area does and its beauty and its allure. And there's going to be growing pains with it. There's going to be stuff that you're going to have people that have been here a whole life and just seen this place blow up, and the other people that come in because of it, like I did in 2005. But even the time I've been here, I've been blown away at how much it's grown. Like, we were playing golf the other day at Green Spring Golf Course, and number 8 tee box, you're kind of up high, and you can just look out towards the airport. And that there wasn't anything out there, for the most part. Now it's like, holy cow. Yeah, and that's not even the end of where it can go. It can wrap around Sand Hollow. That whole bottom corridor of Washington County is, I think, where a lot of that growth is going to end up. Yeah. But it's interesting to see this first quarter that we're starting to see a little bit of more of a status quo, maybe a little bit of a rebound to what we're seeing, but supply and demand is still a big issue. We're not building enough homes for the demand, so that's always going to keep those prices higher.
Yeah, and comparing it back to the rates where we started, we haven't seen rates improve a whole lot, and so it's like you're saying, like, we're seeing, number of transactions going up, building permits are going up, not a ton, but they're going up. It's not because rates are coming down. It's just like you said, people are realizing this is just how it is, and I got to jump in. I got to go for it. So,
and that's what I think too. I think it's more, okay, this is where we're at. It's not anymore, well, it jumped up, it's got to come down. There's always a thought, whether it's stock, bond, whatever it is, if something jumps up really high, there's always a thought, well, it's got to come back down. And we did, because we hit 8. We're hitting 8. Now we're kind of in that 6s. I think we're more of a wait and see kind of pattern. Yeah. And I think you're going to see that people are just realizing, okay, this is what the new normal is. I'm not going to wait for the rate to hit 5 and miss out on the price of the home being $400 when it's going to be 6 by the time I get there, right? Or more, or whatever the price of the home is going to be. Yeah. And and that's what you want the market to be, more stable. And that's really what you're starting to see is these numbers. But I think it's an incredibly discovered place to live. It's one of the best places I've ever lived in the whole country. I just love Southern Utah. Yeah. So it's good to see that we're starting to see a little better numbers, but it still is. We still have more supply than demand, and that's always going to be what's going to dictate price more than interest rates. Yeah. And even if rates and here's the thing, if rates do dip with our current supply level, you think prices go down? No. In fact, what it'll do is if rates do drop and the supply is not going up more, then everything that's left over is just going to get gobbled up. Yeah. So appreciate Jared Infinity Title, and love having these conversations with you. Love you coming on the show. We're going to try to do this each quarter, do an update on what happened in Washington County with interest rates, permits, NODs, that kind of thing, and just see how they do. One quick prediction. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think we're going to continue a slight increase this year, or what do you think?
I think so. You know, I would be surprised if we see 5% rates this year. I would say it's going to be next year. So I think just a steady increase this year is what I think.
Well, great. Check out my website, ryanbolton.com. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that's a wrap. See you next time.
This has been the Clear to Close podcast. Please submit your comments, questions, and topics for future episodes to cleartoclosepod@gmail.com. That's clear the number 2, closepod@gmail.com or ryanbolton.com. Please like, follow, and share. And until next time, this is the Clear to Close podcast. The views expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of Patriot Home Mortgage, Equal Housing Lender NMLS number 299717. This has been a production from a podcast studio.